And welcome to Grandad's Reviews. Today I thought I'd have a look at profiles and presets in Lightroom and Photoshop. How they're used, how they work, and how to create your own. So I thought we'll start off in Lightroom, have a look in there, and let's get started. So we're in Lightroom. I've got an image up, and on the left we've got our presets. Now, presets in the simplest form is a snapshot of your develop panel here. So wherever you've moved these sliders, so if we wanted to bring the exposure down, a bit of contrast, the highlights down, bring the shadows up, bring the whites up, bring the blacks down. We can take a snapshot of these settings here by creating a preset. So if let's do something a bit over the top here, gone a little bit crazy. So we create a preset from there. I'll just call it test. I'll stick it in our users. We'll check all and go create, and that comes up down here in the test. So if I reset everything on here, so this is how the image came into Lightroom, and I press on test, all these sliders have gone to where we set them. So that's basic preset. I'll reset there. Now a profile on the other hand, which is in this section here, and you would have your camera matching profiles, so that's what's usually in your camera, and you've got Adobe RAW profiles. So if I picked this monochrome one and go close, as you see, none of the sliders in the develop module have changed. They're still at 0. So now you can still move these whatever amount you need. And how I'd like to show this, how this is actually working, and this isn't how it actually works in Lightroom because Lightroom doesn't use layers or anything, is to show a visualization of how this is working. So to start with, you'd load your image out of the camera, so that comes up first. As soon as you move one of these sliders or hit a preset, that'll be your adjustment layer. So that's the next layer up. So now you've adjusted those things. Now profile, when you add a profile in, that sits on top of it again. Now if you go to some of the profiles, let's pick this one here, you can actually change the amount, which is like changing the opacity of that layer, but you're not changing anything here. These sliders are only going to affect that adjustment layer that's in between your base image and your profile. So you're looking down through the profile to the adjustment layer to their image. So nothing in the profile is changing when you change these sliders. The only thing that's changing is that adjustment layer. So it's like looking through a stained glass window into a building and someone's putting a light on in the building. Yes, it'll get brighter, but the actual stained glass window won't change. So that's how that's working. Next, I'd like to get into how you can create these and how you can use them in your photography. So here we are in Photoshop. I've opened up a raw file in Camera Raw, and this is the basics panel. Now to create a profile in here, do your adjustments. So we'll go a bit over the top, make it very warm. And here, our little virus. So we've done quite a major changes. So we've done a few changes in it, and we want to keep that as a profile because you want to use that look on other similar images. So if you go to presets, which is here, if you look down the bottom, we've got this in. If you hover, it says create new preset. We don't want to create a preset, we want to create a profile. So if we hold the Alt key down, then click on it, we get this new box. It's a new profile. So if we call this, can't spell, test again, then I can ask you where you want to put it. Now you can put it in user profiles, just profiles, or any that you've already put in, or you can create a new group. Now I've created a group, so I'll put it into there. And this is the current image settings that we want to include. So I've got a profile already on it, which is the classic chrome profile that's in this camera, which we can keep on. Everything we've done in the basics panel, because it's noticed we've changed something. The HSL adjustments, because I've done something in there, so I'll remember that. And the post crop, I've done the vignetting. So it knows we've done those, but if we don't want them, we can untick them. We'll keep them as that. Everything else we'll leave as it is. We don't need to do anything on that at all. And we'll just hit OK. We'll reset the image. And in our profiles, under me, we should have one called test. And that will put this on here. We've got an amount slider, so we can add up and down on the amount. Now if we want to change anything on this test one, there is another menu. It's a little bit tricky to get to. So if you hold down the Alt key, right click on the name, but hold it down and go to rename profile, then release, you get this other dialog box up. You can rename it, you can change what group you want to put it in, you can give it a short name, a description, copyright, contact, and down here where it says applicability, you can limit it to Fuji X-T30 images because that's what it was taken with, or limit it to the classic, something that's got a classic chrome profile. You can limit it to just to raw images, or to raw and non-raw images. You can limit to just colour images or colour and monochrome, and you can limit it the range to normal and high dynamic range images there. So you can do that, and it will support the amount slider, which is that slider up there. So we'll rename it to test 2, and now we've got it there under test 2. Go up here, reset that. So go through that again. So if we want to change some settings, we're in the basic panel, want to change the exposure, contrast, we'll bring the highlights down, bring the shadows up, bring the whites up, bring the blacks down, add a bit of texture in it, a bit of clarity, dehaze it, or saturate it, vibrance. Let's do something in everything. So tone curve will change, detail take a bit up, we'll bring the reds up, bring the greens up, we'll split tone it, put a bit of red in the highlights, some blue in the shadows, do that vignette again, like so. We can even just click on a preset if we want to. So we've done all our changes. Hold the Alt, click on And now as you can see, it's ticked all those for us. We can leave that as normal, don't touch anything else. Call it test 3. Go OK. Reset that. Go into here. See now user profiles, because that's where we left it. Click on it. We've done it. And we've got our slider here. So if we don't want it as much, we want it more, we can move it there. So that's your basic profile. And again, if you want to change anything, hold down the Alt, hold down your right mouse, slide to rename, and we can change it in here if we want to. Or if you want to delete it, to do that. Now some of these you can't right click on and get that rename. They've been locked by either Adobe or your camera matching. You can't do those as well. So just be aware of that. Now another thing you can do is you can create a preset on any image. It doesn't have to be a raw image. So if we come out of that one, open another image. This time we'll open a JPEG. Any one will do, so we'll pick that one, which is a JPEG, same image. This is the JPEG. So if you go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, you get the same dialog box up. So in here, again, we can do our changes, bring the highlights down, saturate it, put some texture into it, go to your presets, hold down Alt, and we can still do the profiles. So let's just put this on test again. Okay, and then when we go back here, into here, here's our test. This time when we right click on it and go to rename, the difference is in this model here, we can change it to all models and formats, and we can change it to raw and non-raw images. Again, we can change those. Now the other thing we can do, we can add a LUT or a lookup table to our profile. So this time we'll reset everything to, so there's no changes on here. Profile is just going to be colour because it's a colour image. I'm going to go to our presets, I'm going to click, make sure nothing's ticked in here, we'll call it LUT. I'm going to put in the user profiles. So when you get the dialog box up, we're going to name it, make sure nothing's in here. We're going to click colour lookup table, will take us to this dialog box. Got some LUTs in here, so let's do an XT30 to there. Colour space, we'll leave it as sRGB, leave that to 32, leave it as that. Now these settings here is that slider you get when you're actually in Lightroom, so where you can make it not as much or more actually in the profile, like an opacity slider. So the minimum is going to be 0, it's going to start at 100% and it's going to go up to 200%. You can change these to start at 50 and max 100, that's entirely up to you. You can work around it. We go OK. So now when you go into here, user profiles, there's the image with that LUT you've loaded. Now the LUTs, I mean like that XT30 LUT, that is for putting on an F-Log video, but you can download LUTs if you want to. Again, we can right click, go into rename, and we can change, again, whatever we want to change in here. Now the next thing we can look at is creating our own LUTs to put on or into a profile. So we'll have a look at creating a LUT that we can do in Photoshop, and then we'll load that into a profile, and then we'll go back into Lightroom and put it on an image. So we've got this image again, we're in Photoshop, so let's change the brightness, lighten it up a bit of contrast. Now with a LUT, the only thing you can put into a LUT is colour information, changes to the colour, so you can't put in cropping or texture or clarity or anything like that. It's just got to be colour related. So in this case we've changed the brightness, we'll go into the levels, let's go to hue saturation, I'll change that, warming filter on, and we'll do the colour balance. Let's add some colour into the mid-tones, shadows will make a bit bluer, and the highlights will very redder. So we've made this change. Okay, it's not something nice, but it will just show the technique. Change it however you want. And then what we want to do next is go to export and colour lookup tables. So we're going to give it a description. We'll call this test 4. You can put your copyright in it if you want to. If you remember from when we were doing the profiles, the grid points, it said 32, so we'll leave this at 32, and we're just going to make it a .cube. We don't need any of these other ones here. And we hit OK, and it will say where do we want to put it. So funny enough, you have to name it twice for some reason. So we'll put it into here, put a new folder, go on test so we can find it, and go save. So that's saved out that lookup table. So one way to check, get rid of all these. So we're back to how it came. Go to adjustments, colour lookup, load a LUT, test, there's our test, and there's our LUT. So it's put that on to there. So what we can do then is with this image, go to filter, camera raw filter, leave all these as they are, go to presets, hold down Alt, give it a name, we'll put in the user profiles, we'll look for a colour lookup table, it'll come up, test, there's our test 4 cube, let's say samples 32 again, the amounts, let's say you can leave it as it is or you can change that amount, go OK, and then in our profiles, under user profiles, there's our test. So we can add that onto there. So we've added that LUT. We can then make some changes, crazy changes like this. Go back to our presets, hold down Alt again, and our colour lookup table is still in here because we've put it in that, but we've also made some basic settings. So we can go OK. Let's reset this. Now user profiles, test 6 has now got that LUT applied and the adjustments we've done. So we can change how they interact with each other. So we'll come out of this and now we'll go back into Lightroom and have a look at how the presets and the profiles all interact. So here we are back in Lightroom and got the image in. And if we go to our profiles here, now the user profiles, and there's the two profiles that we created. Now if you've already got Lightroom open when you create them, you're going to have to close Lightroom and restart it to bring them up. So this profile, we didn't change anything on that. The other profile we did, but as you notice, these sliders haven't moved because, as I was saying, it's a layer above your adjustment layer, and nothing here has changed. So if we keep this profile in, so we've got this profile called test 6, it's in, say it's slider, we can alter this to wherever we want, so we'll leave it there. If we now do some adjustments again using the sliders, we'll just do something a bit silly, but I'm going to go really silly here. So we've done a lot of changes here, and what we'll do is create a preset, make sure they're all checked. I'm going to put it into user presets. We'll call this test 2 and we'll create it. So let's reset this. So this is how it came in. We've got no other profile on apart from the classic Chrome one that it was shot in. We'll go to test 2, hit that, and as you can see it's added the profile and all of the slider settings that we put into that. Now just be aware, when you're in here you can't do the same right click and delete. You can only do that in Photoshop. So quick recap. The preset here is just a snapshot of your develop panels settings. So wherever you put these sliders, whatever profile you've picked, that's all a preset is. So if this slider in your preset is right over at the end of highlights and you want to take some highlights out, you can't do it. That's as far as it will go. Profile is the next level up, which is on top of, and it doesn't adjust these. So if we pick a profile, these sliders haven't moved, but if that profile, if we've brought the highlights right down and saved that, we can still bring the highlights down again. So if you brought the highlights down to -100 when you created that profile, you can bring them down another -100 for a total of 200. So that's one of the powers of profiles, that you've still got the full range on your developed sliders. The other power is in the profile you can add a LUT. So if you found a LUT on the internet that you quite like, or one you've created, you can add it into a profile and bring it into Lightroom and use it. So that's my look at presets and profiles in Lightroom and how to create them in Photoshop. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. If you want to be notified, hit that bell button. Till next time, see you later.